Hey, welcome back to Framelines. My name is Shane Taylor. I'm an Irish street photographer based in London. In this episode of Framelines, we're going to take a look at the work of Paola Franqui, otherwise known as Monaris. She is a Puerto Rican born, New Jersey based street photographer. She's known predominantly for her work in New York City, but she travels the world frequently, and you'll often see her pop up on her Instagram stories in places like Greenland or Brazil, taking beautiful, candid photos of people. It's a very humanist style of street photography. She's also known for her cinematic editing. So that's something we're going to take a look at in this episode. We're also going to look at her new book, published by Setanta Books. It's available to buy now. And we're also going to catch up with Monaris on a Zoom chat. So that's all coming up in a few minutes. But before we get to that, I want to thank our sponsor, MPB. MPB is the world's largest online platform for photo and video kit. They buy over 20,000 cameras and lenses every month from visual storytellers around the world, making kit more accessible and affordable in a way that doesn't cost the earth. Trade in for the kit you want, from camera bodies and lenses to filters and accessories. They've got what you need for the work you want to create. And I want to give a quick shout out to Blackmagic Design for sending us some Blackmagic Pocket Cinema 6K cameras. They've sent us 2 of these, so we're going to use these to film more episodes outdoors. There's going to be lots of slow motion footage of both of us slowly lifting the camera to our eye. There's going to be so much of that, you're going to get sick of it. So, Monaris, let's talk about Paola Franqui and her work. What I like most about Paola's photography is that, for whatever her reasons, in most of her work she is focused on people and the interactions amongst people in cities. That to me is the origins of street photography, way back when there wasn't even really a term for it. And photographers like Walker Evans and Helen Levitt would travel around cities like New York and on its subway, photographing people in tight, intimate pictures way back in 1938. You could even say Walker Evans started the trend of shooting into coffee shop windows. So I think Paola's photography is a continuation of the kind of street photography that was around for a very long time, and it sort of disappeared in the 70s when photographers became a bit more interested in juxtaposition and humor and dramatic light. But I think it's back, and it's more popular than ever due to platforms like Instagram, and in large part due to the interest in photography of Vivian Maier, who Paola often cites as an influence and whose work has resonated with the millions of people around the world who saw the documentary Finding Vivian Maier. So as you can see, it's filled with really lovely photos, and I think the treatment of the book itself has been beautifully handled by Setanta. It's designed by Tom Booth Woodger, who I think, when dealing with a lot of black in these photos, made the clever decision to print on gloss. So it gives a sort of gloss embossed effect. And I think it gives the blacks and the color in general a real richness and a real vibrance, and kind of lifts off the paper. It's also unusual in that the background paper is black, matte black, which in my mind presents the photos as if you're looking at them on a movie screen in a dark theater. So that is Momentos by Monaris. It's available now through Setanta Books. Setanta also have Josh's book, Brilliant Parade, and there's another great street photography book by Josh K. Jackson called Sleepless in Soho. So they've been publishing some really great street photography for ages. Check out Setanta Books. There's tons of great stuff there. You probably get lost in their website or spend a fortune and get in trouble and then blame me. So I caught up with Paola one morning. We had a Zoom chat, and we talked about her book and her approach to photography. So you moved to New Jersey when you were a teenager. Do you think that's had an effect on how you see New York when you do travel to New York, that maybe you've got like a different perspective? Because like I find myself that, because I'm not from London, I grew up listening to stories of London that relatives would have told me, because they've lived here, and they tell me like how great London is and how much of a better life you can have here. So when I did move here, I'm sure that was in my subconscious. Do you ever think about that?
Oh yeah, I absolutely. I mean, I come from Puerto Rico. It's like a little island. We don't have, it looks so different from New York City. So I remember when my journey as a photographer started, I was like so overwhelmed, and so it was like overwhelmed, inspired, amazed. Like it was like so many different emotions because it was like so different from what I'm used to. And I think to this day, I still don't take um, for granted that we can just be in New York City in like in an hour and that I'm going to be there. I mean, it's like a lot of my friends live in the city, so they can just like, take photos every day. But for me, that I have to commute and actually, it's like an hour, and I just enjoy like the whole journey. And like I look at New York City as just like a playground for street photographers, and it's like all my friends are like, oh my God, you're so lucky that you have New York City like so close. And it's true because it's so different from what I was born and from Puerto Rico, that it's just it's fascinating. And the fact that I can just, have the liberty of going there and photographing is it's beautiful. It's a beautiful feeling.
I think we have like a sort of a shared visual language of New York, and that we've seen it in movies for years. Like when I think of New York, I think of Home Alone, I think of Ghostbusters,
Yes.
from that kind of point of view. So, and I kind of see that in your photos, because like you described them yourself as cinematic.
Mhm.
So, do you think that's sort of in the back of your head whenever you're out there photographing?
Absolutely, because I also don't want to photograph like what New York is known for, like the bridges and like when you think about New York, you think of specific things. With my photography, I just I want you to know that it's New York City, but it's like not like, oh, where did you take that's in New York. So I try to like put my cinematic style, and it's like everything that I see in New York that's going to look like a movie. It doesn't matter where you are. I don't want you to know that it's in New York City. That's why I don't show like specific things in New York. But yeah, it all ties everything together, and it's part of it. Yes.
Yeah. And I think the cinematic language that you use, it does remind me of, those older movies from New York where cinematographers would shoot with longer lenses, which is something that was fairly unusual for street photography up until a couple of years ago. And it just seems very sort of influenced by that sort of visual language, I think.
I think one of my favorite lenses for street is the 85 1.8. It's like, when I first started using that lens, people would be like, oh, then you're not a street photographer because you use an 85. You're scared of getting close to people. Like, I bet you wouldn't be able to take a photo up close. Like, it was just like, that constant, like, negative, like, stigma of like, no, you're not a street photographer because you're using something that's, like an 85 or a 55.
Yeah, 85 is one of my favorites as well. And 85, when you're looking for a mirrorless camera and you see the world in 85, it's like you have your own movie when you lift the camera
Yes.
up. A lot of people think that 28 mil and 35 mil, and that's what street photography is meant to be. But if you look back to people like Harry Callahan, who shot this series called Women Lost in Thought, and he shot that in like the 50s or 60s, I think it was. And this guy used, it was a Leica, and it was a 100 millimeter lens on a Leica. No stabilization, none of the
Yeah.
mod cons we're used to with Sony cameras and stuff. But very sort of similar work to your work and to the stuff that I do with 85 mil. And there's another guy called Dave Heath. He used very long lenses. I'd say 80, maybe 135. And but his style of photography is very focused on interactions between people, and you can see a lot of emotion on people's faces. So that's something that sort of resonated with me, as in I sort of see my own work in that, even though it's way better than my own work. But did you ever find photos like that or photographers like that where you're like, oh, you can imagine yourself in their shoes as they took the photo?
All the time. That's the story of my life. Especially like, we have so many books. Like my collection is like almost like 100 books. And just like seeing how things used to be and
Yeah.
how everybody looked amazing and the cars and everything. Obviously we don't have that now. But I think it's important to note that years from now, I probably people are going to feel the same way that we feel when we look back on like, how things used to be and how everything was so photogenic. I think that that's why it's so important to continue documenting the world that as it is now, because years from now, I think most people are going to feel the same ways as we do. they're gonna be like, oh my God, like look at that. They had a TV. What is that? Like stuff
Yeah.
like that. Like
Yeah, like
cars.
what
They're
is
not
that?
flying.
What's that device they're holding up and looking at,
Yes.
you know? Yeah,
Exactly. Because
totally.
like you were always looking for someone reading a newspaper, right? Because it's like that, old school nostalgia. But now I'm like, you know what? Phones are a thing as well. Like everybody's on their phones like constantly. And
Yeah.
it's another way, like a newspaper, but a phone. And it's also important to document because it's just, that's the way that we live it now.
Totally. And I see some criticism of people, they'll say that, oh, it's easy to take a photo of someone looking at their phone. But like you have to document it. It's the same way that you would take a photo of someone looking at a paper 50 years ago or something. It's the same thing. Like I think
Exactly the same thing.
you can't just write off uh people looking at their phones, like just say, no, I'm never going to take photos of that. I think there's so many rules in street photography. I just try and ignore most of it. Do you kind of feel the same?
I don't listen to them anymore. Once when I first started taking photos, of course you try to follow all these rules because you're learning, right? But once you start doing it for so long, you just do what works for you
Yeah.
because that's the best way to do this. Like if you feel comfortable with the way that you do certain things, then just continue doing them. Forget about the rules. Like I'm not saying that people that do follow the rules are wrong because I would never say that, but it's just, everybody has different ways of doing things.
Yeah, you just have to find like I think the main thing is find what you find interesting and just try and photograph that, I think.
It's a work in progress. It's, we're constantly learning new ways and new things and learning about ourselves. And I think that's exciting, that we just, I don't think for artists like us and creators and photographers, it's like the beauty of photography is that, we're probably going to be doing this for the rest of our life, or at least I am, because I love it with all my heart and it's my passion. And I'm just, I love doing it. So it's just like I'm excited about the future of things and how I'm gonna see things differently, how my style is gonna change. So it's like that. You just wait and see and continue developing your style and the way that you document things.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of future, do you like what do you see? Do you have any sort of plans for the immediate future, projects you're working on? Or what do you see in general that you might move into? Maybe it's movies or
Yeah.
video, that kind of thing?
I think for me, the next step in my career, it's like I want to move into filmmaking. Maybe start by taking like behind the scenes photos in a movie, just so I can get a feel how everything works, but hopefully filmmaking 100%. I think that's the next step. I love photography, but I also love films and just watching different things and seeing how everything works and learning about it. I bought a book about filmmaking. So it's like I'm slowly getting into it. I just need one door to open up because once that happens, more follow. So hopefully but that's the goal. Definitely filmmaking, cinematography, maybe color grading for videos because I love color grading in general. So maybe, for for shows or a movie or something. So we'll see. We'll see. It's exciting because you don't know what's going to happen. So
Yeah.
it's like you never know. Like I think last year I was so focused on the future, right? Of like, oh my God, what's gonna happen? Like, am I gonna be able to work again? Am I gonna be able to do this? But now because of COVID, I've learned to live in the present. So I'm more focused on the now than anything else. So it changes things, the way that you see the world. It's just like I'm so grateful to be in this moment now. I'm so grateful for what's happening now. And I just, live day by day.
Yeah. That's a good note to end it on. Optimistic note. So yeah, thanks so much for chatting to us. We're gonna take a look at your book, and is if there's anything you want to, is there any shout outs you want to give or anything like that before we wrap it up? Of
Oh my God, no, because then I'll forget someone and
course.
they'll kill me.
Yeah.
So, but I love you all and everything. And thank you so much for thank you so much for having me. This is awesome, and I have nothing but respect for you both, and I love what you guys are doing. And
Thanks.
hopefully we'll meet in person one day and take photographs together.
Absolutely. We'll have to come to New York, or maybe you can come to London. So thanks, Paola, for that chat. She's a very patient woman. She, as well as being a great photographer, she is someone who is very generous with her time. and she's ready to help people out all the time. I've never seen her say a bad word about anyone, so she's a lovely person in general. That's pretty much it. Thanks for getting this far. Thanks for watching. Check out Monaris on Instagram and her website. Take a look at her book on Setanta Books, and if you do order it, let Keith at Setanta know you came from us. Setanta, by the way, is run by an Irish man. The name Setanta is from the Irish given name of Cuchulainn, who's like an Irish mythological figure. So yeah, watch out for the Irish. We're behind all the good stuff. Yeah, like we're a small nation, but there's bloody millions of us scattered everywhere. Yeah, and on that note, thanks for watching. Leave a comment, subscribe, and see you next time.